In the months that followed the blockbuster move for Luka Doncic, the Lakers found themselves living in a mix of excitement, doubt, and anticipation. Fans celebrated the arrival of one of the league's most brilliant offensive forces, yet the atmosphere around the team carried a curious tension. Without Anthony Davis commanding the interior, Los Angeles no longer looked as imposing in the paint. Defensive stops came in streaks, offensive runs sparked occasionally, but something essential felt missing, as if the roster had been carefully assembled while still leaving one crucial piece out of place. That missing piece became the source of countless debates among analysts, insiders, and supporters who wondered whether the gamble to acquire Doncic also opened a void too significant to ignore. As much as the franchise embraced the opportunity to reshape its future, observers noticed the absence of a true rim protector, a player capable of dominating around the basket and anchoring possessions on both ends. DeAndre Ayton contributed size and solid minutes, yet never fully matched the vertical pressure or defensive intimidation that Davis naturally carried. Coaches repeatedly adjusted schemes, seeking combinations that could compensate for the loss. Amid these conversations, an unexpected idea began to circulate quietly among those who studied the league's intricate dynamics: the possibility of bringing Davis back to Los Angeles. At first, the thought sounded unrealistic, almost theatrical, considering everything that happened before the trade and the heavy emotions tied to his exit. But when framed through the desire to maximize Doncic's prime and position the Lakers as a perennial contender, the idea gained surprising traction. It did not stem from nostalgia or regret. Rather, it emerged from the simple question of whether the team could elevate its ceiling by restoring a partnership once considered unstoppable. For all the fascination around the concept, the financial hurdles were enormous. Davis's contract consumed a massive portion of the salary cap, and matching it required more than simply stacking mid-level deals. The front office was deeply reluctant to involve Austin Reeves, who had grown into a critical part of the long-term foundation. That left an uncomfortable but mathematically elegant alternative: utilizing LeBron James's salary slot. LeBron had not appeared that season due to sciatic complications, and with the franchise shifting toward a new timeline centered on Doncic, his future in Los Angeles no longer felt guaranteed. As this possibility developed, the Dallas Mavericks unexpectedly became part of the conversation. With their organization navigating a transitional period, they had the financial structure and motivation to absorb a major contract temporarily. In this version of the scenario, Dallas would take in LeBron, receive valuable draft capital, and then negotiate a rapid buyout that granted him the freedom to join whichever contender aligned with his final ambitions. Though unconventional, the plan presented advantages to every party involved, raising the question of whether such a calculated risk could redefine the league's power balance. Inside the Lakers facility, the discussions reflected the organization's relentless pursuit of championships. Los Angeles was never a franchise interested in half measures or slow-building approaches. With Doncic demonstrating nightly flashes of generational brilliance, the front office understood it could not waste time waiting for ideal conditions to form naturally. The Western Conference was tightening, rival teams were loading up, and every move required precision. Reuniting Davis with Doncic, especially alongside a roster already showing strong chemistry, represented a potential leap rather than a simple adjustment. Coaches studied hours of film, imagining how Davis's defensive versatility and finishing ability could elevate the team's schemes. They knew that Luka thrived beside a rim-running center capable of quick reads, rapid dives, and relentless protection of the interior. They also remembered how Davis once commanded games through timing, instincts, and sheer physical presence. The thought of pairing that with Doncic's creativity, patience, and mastery of pace sparked a wave of enthusiasm within the basketball operations group. Still, nothing about the situation was simple. The past between Davis and the franchise lingered like a silent backdrop to every new idea. His injuries, his frustrations, and the misunderstandings that accumulated over several seasons had left scars that were not easily dismissed. Yet the possibility of turning the page once again, this time with a version of the team designed specifically to support both stars, continued to intrigue decision-makers. They understood that the window to compete at the highest level could close as quickly as it opened. Even fans who had previously felt conflicted about Davis's exit began to imagine the reunion differently. With Doncic leading the offense, Reeves taking a leap, and the team developing an identity based on creativity and resilience, the addition of Davis felt less like reversing a mistake and more like completing an unfinished plan. Los Angeles had built something promising, but adding a dominant interior presence could transform promise into dominance. Supporters debated endlessly, some calling it foolish, others calling it destiny. As the idea gained visibility, it became a symbol of the Lakers' bold identity. No franchise in the league embraced dramatic swings quite like Los Angeles. Their history was built not on caution but on conviction. And as whispers grew louder, one truth emerged. The team would explore any opportunity that aligned with winning, no matter how chaotic, controversial, or unexpected it appeared. Whether the reunion would ever materialize remained uncertain, but one fact was undeniable. The Lakers had entered an era defined by audacity, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. In the days that followed the internal discussions about a possible reunion between Anthony Davis and the Lakers, the organization found itself balancing ambition with realism. Every department, from analytics to scouting, understood that adding Davis back into the structure built around Luka Doncic would be a transformative shift. Yet the path toward such a move required navigating delicate relationships, financial constraints, and the perception of the league. Los Angeles had always operated with a level of boldness that separated it from other franchises, but even within that identity, this idea carried an unusual combination of risk and promise. For the fans, the scenario represented something exhilarating, a chance to restore dominance in the paint while simultaneously empowering a new offensive engine. Behind closed doors, conversations intensified as executives evaluated each possible avenue. Luka's presence changed the tone of every meeting. His ability to elevate teammates, manipulate defenses, and alter strategic realities made him the kind of player who justified aggressive moves. As the team settled into a promising rhythm during the season, observers noted how often Luka sought vertical threats around the rim, how frequently he created advantages that remained unused due to the absence of a true lob finisher. Coaches reviewed possessions where his brilliant reads resulted in nothing more than contested mid-range attempts from teammates not suited for that role. It was clear that the roster, while talented, lacked the gravitational force that Davis naturally provided. Meanwhile, discussions with Dallas began to take shape. The Mavericks, still dealing with instability after a disappointing start and leadership changes, quietly explored ways to reposition themselves for future flexibility. Taking on LeBron James's contract, even temporarily, offered them an opportunity to reshape their books while collecting valuable draft picks. Their executives recognized that aiding the Lakers in a potential blockbuster could offer them long-term benefits. The idea of absorbing LeBron was not about competing immediately but about redefining their economic structure. It was a strategic maneuver to regain leverage in future negotiations and rebuild under new organizational direction. For LeBron himself, the scenario presented an unorthodox crossroads. Although his legacy in Los Angeles remained monumental, the shifting priorities of the franchise suggested that a parting of ways might be mutually beneficial. A buyout would free him to join a contender with a structure aligned to his current stage of career. Analysts speculated about the destinations he might consider, imagining him in environments where his experience, leadership, and still potent on-court presence could tilt championship odds. The thought of him joining the Knicks, Heat, or Cavaliers stirred discussions across the league. It was a potential storyline filled with narrative weight, emotional resonance, and competitive intrigue. As the trade framework evolved internally, the Lakers found themselves examining every detail of Davis's previous years with the franchise. They evaluated the patterns of injuries that had frustrated both sides and considered how a new partnership with Luka might reduce his physical burden. In Dallas, Davis had already suffered another injury, raising concerns about his durability. Yet, paradoxically, it reinforced the argument within Los Angeles that he might thrive in an environment more suited to protecting his body. Executives imagined a system where he would defend the paint but share offensive responsibilities in a way that preserved energy. Luka's methodical pace and precision could provide Davis with a level of structure that minimized wear and maximized impact. Fan reactions continued to evolve. Social media buzzed with debates, memes, predictions, and emotional outbursts. Some supporters insisted the franchise should avoid revisiting old partnerships, wary of repeating past mistakes. Others argued passionately that Davis had delivered a championship and deserved recognition rather than skepticism. What united most fans was excitement, raw, unfiltered anticipation at the idea of pairing two generational talents with complementary skill sets. The notion of a lineup featuring Doncic, Davis, and Reeves ignited curiosity across every corner of the Lakers community. Within the locker room, players remained focused on the season. Reeves, now a fully established leader, embraced the responsibility of stabilizing the team through transitions. His chemistry with Luka grew with each game, creating a dynamic backcourt forward synergy powered by instinct and trust. Veterans accepted the shifting roles that came with playing alongside a superstar like Doncic. Younger players found themselves empowered, discovering opportunities to contribute in meaningful ways. The environment around the team pulsed with purpose, even as uncertain futures hovered in the background. Team officials monitored the morale closely. They knew trade rumors could unsettle players or shift priorities, but they also trusted the culture built through transparency. Coaches reminded the roster that the organization would always prioritize winning and that any major decision would be made with long-term success in mind. This clarity strengthened the group's unity, enabling them to navigate distractions while continuing to build momentum. Their performances reflected a mixture of confidence and hunger, the unmistakable signs of a team striving for something larger than incremental success. As speculation intensified, the league's media landscape became saturated with discussion about the Lakers' next move. Analysts broke down potential lineups, salary cap experts mapped the financial pathways, and former players debated the emotional ramifications of reuniting with Davis. Some framed it as redemption, others as necessity, others as a sign of the organization's refusal to settle for mediocrity. The conversation revealed something fundamental about the Lakers' identity. They were a franchise built not merely on championships but on constant pursuit of greatness, driven by a belief that boldness could alter destiny. By the end of the week, the idea that once seemed far-fetched had grown into a legitimate possibility. Not guaranteed, not inevitable, but possible. And in the world of the Los Angeles Lakers, possibility was often the spark that ignited transformation. This was a franchise that thrived on audacity, embraced chaos, and welcomed the pressure that came with ambition. Whether the reunion with Davis would ever materialize remained unknown, but one truth echoed through every corridor of the organization. The Lakers were once again preparing to reshape the future, one daring step at a time. As the conversations around the potential blockbuster continued to swirl, a deeper examination of Anthony Davis's final years in Los Angeles resurfaced inside the organization. The front office had not forgotten the emotional and physical challenges that defined the period following the 2020 championship. Those years shaped internal perspectives, guided decisions, and ultimately influenced the willingness to part ways with a player who once represented the perfect co-star for LeBron James. Revisiting those memories was not done out of bitterness but out of necessity, as executives needed to understand how a second partnership with Davis could differ from the first. They acknowledged the greatness he brought but also the complications that had gradually eroded trust. One of the primary concerns involved durability. Davis's injury history had become a point of constant anxiety for coaches and staff members, who spent entire seasons reorganizing rotations based on his availability. Reports emerged of training camps where Davis arrived in shape and ready for battle, contrasted by summers where communication with the franchise was minimal. The inconsistency created friction, with some staff believing he could have taken a more proactive approach to conditioning. Yet others defended him, arguing that his playing style, physical, forceful, and centered around interior battle, placed him at greater risk than the average star. These differing interpretations lingered in the background as the Lakers evaluated their interest in rebuilding the relationship. Equally important was the long-standing disagreement about Davis's preferred role on the court. He had always expressed a desire to play fewer minutes as the lone interior anchor, a request that had grown louder through the seasons. The front office, however, had prioritized flexibility over fulfilling that specific roster demand, believing that committing assets to traditional centers would limit future options. This philosophical divide became symbolic of the broader issue. Davis wanted structural support for longevity, while the organization sought adaptive strategies that kept pathways open. It was not animosity but a difference in basketball ideology. Yet it was enough to erode alignment and plant the seeds of separation. The internal debates continued as staff looked closely at how Davis's game might evolve beside Luka Doncic. Unlike the pace-heavy offenses Davis had previously played in, Luka's methodical tempo offered a contrasting rhythm. His approach slowed the game just enough to reduce wear on teammates, creating more controlled possessions. Analysts argued that Davis could benefit significantly from this style, maintaining his impact without enduring constant collisions. They also explored the possibility of limiting his responsibilities through strategic depth, imagining new ways to preserve his longevity. Reintegrating him into Los Angeles would not be about repeating the past but constructing a new version of their collaboration that protected both player and franchise. In parallel, the Mavericks situation added another layer to the discussion. Davis's arrival in Dallas had not produced the stability the organization hoped for, largely due to injuries and the sudden departure of their general manager. Reports indicated a sense of uncertainty around the team, a feeling that permeated both the locker room and the front office. This instability created an environment where Davis's future felt unresolved. For the Lakers, this presented both an opportunity and a concern. They saw the possibility of acquiring him under circumstances that favored their long-term plan, yet they also recognized the importance of ensuring he had the right structure and support system to thrive. The situation reinforced their belief that Los Angeles, despite its challenges, remained better equipped to maximize his strengths. Meanwhile, Luka continued to shine on the court. His presence grounded the team, creating a sense of direction that energized both veterans and younger players. Teammates spoke openly about his leadership, describing how he elevated their confidence and simplified their responsibilities. With every performance, he demonstrated why the franchise had reshaped its identity around him. Reeves, embracing his role as the second perimeter creator, built a synergy with Luka that powered the offense. Their partnership generated optimism about the future, convincing many that adding a powerful interior presence could unlock a championship-level ceiling. It was within this environment that the Davis conversation carried real weight. Outside the organization, the media frenzy intensified. Reporters dissected every detail of the Lakers' internal dynamics, drawing connections between past events and potential future moves. Some questioned the idea of revisiting a partnership that had ended under tension. Others insisted that Davis's peak alongside Luka could redefine the Western Conference landscape. The speculation only fueled excitement among fans, who analyzed every rumor, podcast discussion, and insider whisper. Their reactions ranged from cautious optimism to feverish anticipation, reflecting the emotional complexity of the Davis era and the promise of what a reunion could deliver. The coaching staff remained deeply engaged in the hypothetical. They envisioned defensive schemes where Davis would anchor the paint while role players supplied consistent perimeter pressure. They imagined offensive sets built on Luka's slow-burn creativity and Davis's ability to finish plays above the rim. With Reeves acting as a connective guard capable of relieving Luka's workload, the prospect of a three-star nucleus appeared increasingly realistic. The more they explored these ideas, the more they concluded that the potential reward outweighed the risks. It was not simply about restoring Davis's past form but unleashing a version of him tailored to a modern system designed around balance, control, and precision. Every day brought new conversations, new angles, and new speculation. Yet the central question remained the same. Were the Lakers ready to embrace a move that would redefine their identity yet again? The decision carried emotional weight, strategic importance, and organizational complexity. But at its core, it represented what Los Angeles had always been, a franchise committed to pushing boundaries, rewriting narratives, and pursuing greatness without hesitation. And as the idea of a reunion with Davis gained momentum, it became increasingly clear that the Lakers were once again standing at the edge of a moment capable of reshaping everything. As the Lakers continued to analyze every possible angle of the proposed reunion, the internal climate grew increasingly intense. Meetings that were supposed to last 20 minutes stretched into hours, with department heads laying out detailed projections, risk assessments, and competitive forecasts for the next 5 years. The organization was not merely evaluating a trade, it was trying to understand whether this move could redefine the trajectory of the franchise. Executives debated how a new core built around Luka, Reeves, and Davis would evolve, what sacrifices would be required, and how the team would ensure that past pitfalls did not resurface. The balancing act between ambition and caution shaped every discussion. Within those conversations, a recurring theme emerged: leadership. The Lakers acknowledged that the dynamic had changed dramatically since Davis last wore purple and gold. Back then, the team leaned heavily on LeBron James to set the tone, manage tensions, and guide the locker room. Now, with LeBron entering the twilight of his career and shifting into a more selective leadership role, the question was whether the team had enough internal voices to maintain stability through the inevitable turbulence of a championship push. Luka's quiet assertiveness, Reeves's growing confidence, and Davis's commanding presence could form a solid nucleus, if their personalities aligned with the demands of a deep playoff run. Scouting reports and analytics models painted a picture of immense potential. Luka's precision and control would allow Davis to conserve energy in key moments, something the Lakers believed was essential for maintaining his durability. Reeves's versatility offered balance on both ends of the floor, blending shot creation with disciplined off-ball movement. In theory, the trio could dominate half-court offenses and generate a defensive backbone capable of suffocating even the most explosive rivals in the conference. The projection team created simulations showing how this roster could match up against established contenders. Many of the outcomes were promising, reinforcing the belief that the Lakers were on the verge of something transformative. But the organization also faced internal skepticism. Some senior staff members raised concerns about chemistry, pointing out past friction involving role expectations and communication breakdowns. These weren't issues of attitude but of clarity. Moments when players were not on the same page regarding responsibilities, rotations, or long-term planning. The basketball operations department emphasized that any reunion with Davis required not only strategic adjustments but also a renewed commitment to transparency. They wanted a structure where players felt informed, supported, and involved in the decisions that affected team performance. Amid the evaluations, whispers from around the league added external pressure. Rival franchises monitored the situation closely, preparing counteroffers and positioning themselves to exploit any hesitation on the Lakers' part. Several teams believed they could pry Davis away by offering deeper asset pools or more flexible cap structures. The Lakers knew the window to act would not remain open indefinitely, and hesitation carried the risk of losing their chance altogether. The possibility of watching Davis join a Western rival intensified the sense of urgency, pushing the front office toward a decisive stance. The media narrative only amplified the stakes. Talk shows dissected every rumor, analysts debated the implications of a potential reunion, and social platforms exploded with speculative scenarios. Fans from Los Angeles and Dallas engaged in heated discussions, each side defending their vision of the future. For Lakers supporters, the prospect of Davis returning represented a chance to reclaim the dominance that had eluded them since the 2020 championship. Mavericks fans, meanwhile, feared that losing their star big man could destabilize the team but also recognized the appeal of reconstructing a roster around Luka with greater depth and long-term flexibility. The duality of hope and uncertainty fueled daily dialogue. Inside the Mavericks organization, the atmosphere was equally tense. Although Luka continued to display unwavering commitment, questions about the team's direction lingered. The sudden shift in leadership after the general manager's departure left a void that had yet to be fully addressed. Davis found himself navigating a situation reminiscent of his final days in Los Angeles, an environment marked by transition, anticipation, and unanswered questions about long-term vision. This uncertainty made the possibility of returning to the Lakers increasingly attractive, especially with the promise of renewed structure and a system better aligned to protect his longevity. As both franchises continued to shape their narratives, the central figures remained focused on basketball. Luka sharpened his craft, determined to lead by example. Reeves embraced his role as a stabilizer, proving he could complement superstars while maintaining his identity. Davis continued to work in silence, letting his performance speak for him. Their actions subtly influenced decision-makers, who saw in them a level of maturity and purpose that could serve as the foundation for something exceptional. The possibility of uniting these forces under one banner felt closer than ever. By the time the Lakers finalized their internal assessments, the organization stood at a crossroads. The decision ahead carried the weight of legacy, expectation, and strategic evolution. But it also represented opportunity, an opening to reshape the franchise around a new era of elite, synchronized talent. The question was no longer whether the move made sense on paper. It was whether the Lakers were ready to embrace the future they had spent months meticulously preparing for, knowing it could ignite a new chapter in their pursuit of greatness. As negotiations advanced behind closed doors, the Lakers began to outline a blueprint that would support a newly formed core without repeating past structural flaws. The front office understood that acquiring Davis again would require more than simply moving pieces around. It demanded an ecosystem designed to preserve his health, enhance Luka's creativity, and elevate the collective efficiency of the roster. Every decision, from coaching rotations to sports science protocols, was examined under a microscope. The organization wanted to prove that this time, it was prepared to sustain a long-term run rather than relying on short bursts of momentum. A central element of this blueprint revolved around redefining roles. Coaches analyzed how to optimize the minutes distribution, ensuring no player carried an unnecessary burden. Luka's mastery of pace allowed the Lakers to build a system that emphasized deliberate execution over constant physical strain. With Davis anchoring the interior, the coaching staff planned schemes where he could focus more on high-impact defensive possessions rather than covering gaps created by inconsistent lineups. Meanwhile, Reeves was projected as the connective force, someone capable of blending playmaking, spacing, and defensive awareness in a fluid, adaptable manner. As weeks of planning turned into a cohesive strategy, excitement quietly grew within the training facility. Player development coaches highlighted how younger pieces on the roster could thrive in a more structured environment. Wings would have clearer responsibilities, less improvisation, and more synergy with star talent. Role players who once struggled to find purpose in chaotic stretches of games would now be guided through defined sequences built around Luka's readings and Davis's vertical gravity. The idea was simple: reduce unpredictability, increase efficiency, and let talent flourish naturally. Yet even with the internal momentum building, challenges loomed. The financial logistics of the deal still hinged on the involvement of a third team willing to provide the necessary cap flexibility. The Mavericks had already signaled openness to the framework, but they wanted guarantees, assurances that draft capital and salary relief would align with their long-term objectives. Their front office saw value in restructuring the team, but they were wary of being left with mismatched contracts or insufficient assets. The Lakers, aware of the delicate nature of these demands, prepared multiple contingency packages to address every concern. Meanwhile, LeBron James remained at the center of the storm, even in his absence from the court. His salary slot made the entire operation possible, yet his future became the subject of endless speculation. Some insiders believed he might welcome a buyout that allowed him to join a contender of his choosing, free from the pressure of carrying a franchise through a transitional era. Others argued that he still had a deep connection to Los Angeles and would resist any move that pushed him out prematurely. Until he clarified his intentions, uncertainty lingered over the timeline of the trade. The tension surrounding LeBron's situation filtered through the league, prompting executive inquiries and exploratory calls. Several teams discreetly asked about his availability, unwilling to miss the chance to land a player whose presence alone could shift a franchise's direction. While most understood that any acquisition would involve a buyout scenario, the possibility of adding such a high-profile figure, even temporarily, generated significant interest. The noise grew louder with each passing day, adding yet another layer of intrigue to an already complex negotiation. Through all of this, Davis watched from a distance, choosing silence over commentary. His demeanor had changed since the emotional turbulence of his departure. He now approached the situation with restraint and reflection. Those close to him noticed a renewed focus, a desire to align himself with an environment built on structure, communication, and shared purpose. He recognized that the Lakers' renewed pursuit stemmed not from desperation but from strategic conviction, a belief that his skill set was central to unlocking the full potential of their new identity. Luka, for his part, continued to deliver performances that reinforced the urgency of the moment. His decision-making sharpened, his patience matured, and his ability to manipulate defensive coverages reached new heights. Every game he played served as a reminder that the Lakers could not afford to waste a single season of his prime. Reeves responded similarly, embracing the weight of responsibility and developing into a player capable of stabilizing both ends of the floor. Their growth strengthened the argument that the time to act was now. By the end of the week, the framework of the deal had begun to solidify. The Lakers, Mavericks, and the prospective third team aligned on most of the structural components, leaving only a few key decisions unresolved. What remained were the difficult choices, the ones that would shape the immediate and long-term future of all franchises involved. And in the heart of Los Angeles, a quiet realization settled over everyone in the room. The next step would determine whether months of planning evolved into a historic turning point or dissolved into another chapter of unrealized ambition. The momentum behind the negotiations began to accelerate as internal meetings grew more frequent and the conversations between front offices intensified. By now, the Lakers had reached a level of clarity that bordered on inevitability. If they wanted to maximize Luka's prime and restore their identity as a contender, securing Davis again was the surest path. This belief shaped every strategic discussion inside their practice facility, from analytics briefings to medical evaluations. The franchise could sense that a defining moment was approaching, and the urgency permeated every department. One of the most complicated factors in the equation was the physical management plan required to reintegrate Davis. The Lakers sports science staff spent long nights building models, projecting workload curves, and analyzing risk indicators. Their conclusion was consistent across multiple studies. With proper monitoring, optimized rest windows, and a stable defensive partner capable of sharing interior responsibility, Davis's durability could be significantly improved. This reinforced the belief that the environment mattered as much as the players' habits, and Los Angeles was determined to craft a system tailored for longevity rather than survival. As these preparations unfolded, the broader roster began to react to the speculation. Some players quietly welcomed the possibility of adding a dominant defensive anchor. Others wondered how their minutes or responsibilities might shift. Reeves, long praised for his composure, handled the uncertainty with ease. He focused on refining his decision-making, mastering screen navigation, and improving catch-and-shoot consistency. He understood that the path to a championship required adaptability, and his value would only increase in a structure where stars attracted the spotlight. Meanwhile, coaching staff members revisited film from Davis's earlier seasons in Los Angeles. They studied sequences where he excelled as a weak-side shot blocker, where his mobility disrupted pick-and-roll actions, and where his presence alone altered offensive plans. The nostalgia came not from sentiment but from tactical recognition. The partnership between Davis and a high IQ creator had been devastating once, and with Luka's command of pace and angles, it could evolve into an even more refined version. The possibilities sparked discussions that stretched late into the evenings, mapping out defensive shells and offensive counters designed to exploit matchups across the conference. At the same time, the Mavericks front office evaluated their long-term trajectory. With the departure of key executives and the uncertainty surrounding their timeline, they prioritized financial flexibility and draft capital. To them, the deal offered an accelerated reset. Taking on LeBron's contract, even temporarily, provided a mechanism to clear space and acquire meaningful assets without committing to players who didn't align with their new vision. What mattered most was the exit strategy, and if the buyout aligned with LeBron's own interests, the benefits were mutual. The third team in the equation continued to play a crucial role. Their willingness to absorb contracts, redistribute assets, and facilitate the financial balance kept the deal alive. Their front office saw the transaction as an opportunity to collect picks and movable pieces while aiding two franchises seeking different outcomes. This triangular cooperation required precision, and every change in numbers demanded recalculations, but the framework remained intact. Everyone involved recognized that such opportunities rarely aligned so cleanly. Throughout the league, analysts and executives speculated about the potential impact of the move. Some argued that pairing Davis with Luka again in Los Angeles would immediately reshape the Western Conference hierarchy. Others believed it was a gamble, an expensive bet on health, chemistry, and timing. But even the skeptics acknowledged the logic. Championship windows are fleeting, and franchises must sometimes make audacious decisions to extend them. History favored those who acted decisively rather than those who hesitated. Inside the Lakers organization, a calm determination replaced the earlier tension. The front office had grown tired of operating in reactive mode, dependent on injuries, external narratives, or unpredictable stretches of form. This move represented a proactive shift, a deliberate attempt to dictate their future rather than endure it. From ownership to coaching staff to analytics departments, there was a sense of alignment that had been missing for years. Everyone understood the stakes, but more importantly, everyone believed in the direction. For Davis, the silence surrounding his intentions became part of the intrigue. He communicated only with a tight circle, avoiding public statements and focusing on recovery. Those close to him indicated he was evaluating the possibility of returning to a franchise that knew both his triumphs and frustrations. The idea of reuniting with a team built around a generational passer like Luka, supported by a more mature infrastructure, held undeniable appeal. It offered the chance to rewrite his legacy in Los Angeles on stronger foundations. By the time the week drew to a close, only minor details remained unresolved. The essential pillars of the agreement stood firmly in place, and momentum was carrying all parties toward a point of no return. What lay ahead was not merely a transaction but a transformation, one capable of reshaping careers, recalibrating expectations, and redefining the future of basketball in Los Angeles. The final steps loomed, and with them the anticipation of a new era built on opportunity, risk, and the promise of redemption. As the final stage of negotiations approached, the atmosphere around the Lakers' headquarters shifted from anticipation to calculated vigilance. Everyone understood that the next moves had to be precise, deliberate, and immune to last-minute turbulence. The organization had come too far to let uncertainty derail a transformational opportunity. Meetings became tighter, communication sharper, and every department prepared for the ripple effects that a blockbuster move would inevitably trigger. The front office continued to refine the strategy for reintegrating Davis not just as a star, but as a central pillar of identity. Their intent wasn't merely to restore the dynamic that once defined the team, it was to evolve it into a more modern and efficient version. With Luka as the creative engine and Davis as the defensive backbone, the Lakers envisioned a structure where complementary players would thrive through clarity of role and strategic simplicity. The coaching staff emphasized actions that played to both stars' strengths, from inverted pick-and-rolls to layered defensive schemes designed to minimize physical strain. Around the league, whispers grew louder. Agents, analysts, and executives exchanged messages trying to confirm whether the deal was now a matter of timing rather than possibility. The uncertainty surrounding LeBron's future added an element of suspense few had seen in years. Some franchises hoped to position themselves as potential landing spots if a buyout occurred, while others simply monitored the unfolding drama, aware that any shift in the Lakers' hierarchy could influence the balance of power across conferences. The speculation became a continuous pulse, feeding an already charged environment. In Dallas, the conversation had shifted as well. With internal restructuring underway and a desire to redefine their competitive horizon, the Mavericks increasingly viewed the trade as a doorway to reset the franchise's foundation. Accepting LeBron's contract, even temporarily, was no longer seen as a burden but as an asset, one that could accelerate financial flexibility and provide a smoother path toward long-term planning. The organization acknowledged that a transition period was inevitable, and embracing it with intention offered a clearer roadmap than resisting an unavoidable reset. Meanwhile, the Lakers' analytics department worked closely with the medical team to create layered contingencies. They mapped out lineup combinations, minute restrictions, and performance thresholds to ensure that the roster could withstand fluctuations in availability. Their models projected that with disciplined load management, Davis could maintain near-elite levels throughout the postseason. Luka's durability further strengthened the projections, giving the team confidence that the duo could provide the stability required for deep playoff runs. These insights reinforced the belief that the risk was manageable and the upside enormous. As preparations intensified, ownership held several private meetings to align long-term objectives with the evolving direction of the franchise. Their goal was to ensure that the incoming structure did not only seek immediate success but also preserved flexibility for future seasons. They viewed Luka as the cornerstone of the next decade, and adding Davis, properly managed and tactically utilized, could extend that window rather than compress it. This alignment at the highest level strengthened the organization's resolve to finalize the move. Through all of this, the roster maintained professionalism despite the swirling uncertainty. Players continued to practice with focus, aware that change was imminent but determined not to let it impact daily performance. Veteran leaders emphasized communication, urging teammates to remain ready regardless of how the situation unfolded. The coaching staff praised the group for its composure, believing that this level of maturity would be crucial in the transition period following the potential acquisition. For Davis, the days felt like a quiet countdown. Each update from his representatives added detail to the emerging picture, and his understanding of the scenario deepened with each passing hour. He recognized the complexity of the moment, returning to a franchise that had once questioned his dedication but now saw him as a missing, indispensable piece. Yet he also understood that the context had changed. This was no longer a team built around aging timelines but one shaped by purpose, stability, and a renewed commitment to excellence. Luka, driven by an internal competitive fire, continued to lead with his on-court brilliance. His performances carried a message, silent yet unmistakable, that he was ready for the next evolution of the franchise. He approached every possession with intent, showcasing an ability to elevate those around him, regardless of uncertainty. Coaches often remarked that these weeks revealed the strongest version of his leadership, a version that would flourish even further with the right support beside him. As the final pieces of the negotiation settled into place, a sense of inevitability washed over all sides involved. The outlines of the agreement were now clear, the motivations aligned, and the stakes understood. What remained was the moment of decision, the point where planning would give way to action. And in Los Angeles, the realization began to spread. The franchise stood on the edge of a monumental shift, one that could redefine not just a season but an era. The final hours before the deal were marked by an unusual quiet, an intensity that didn't rely on noise, but on the weight of what was about to unfold. Inside the Lakers facility, phones buzzed in short, clipped intervals while executives paced between offices, reviewing final terms and ensuring that every element aligned with league regulations. It was the kind of silence that precedes monumental change, a calm layered with anticipation and the awareness that the decisions made here would echo through the league for years. The last sticking point involved draft compensation. Dallas wanted confirmation that the picks they received would be unprotected, giving them maximum freedom during their impending rebuild. Los Angeles resisted at first, wary of sacrificing long-term assets in a league where fortunes could swing with a single injury. But with the window to finalize shrinking and the conviction in their new core stronger than ever, the Lakers agreed to push the deal across the finish line. The sentiment was simple. If you believe in your future, you bet on yourself, not on protection. Meanwhile, discussions surrounding LeBron's situation intensified. His camp sought clarity on the timeline for a potential release, ensuring that any transition would allow him to choose a contender that matched his personal and competitive ambitions. Dallas, aware of the importance of maintaining goodwill, signaled cooperation. Their role wasn't to hold LeBron long-term, It was to facilitate the exchange and accelerate their reset. This understanding eased negotiations and eliminated the last obstacles that had lingered between the teams. Inside the Lakers' war room, the coaching staff finalized integration plans. Rotations were mapped with careful precision. Luka orchestrating from the top, Reeves bridging the perimeter, and Davis restoring the interior dominance that once defined their identity. Coaches visualized the rhythm of games, where Luka would hit Davis on lobs, where Reeves would exploit defensive collapses, where spacing would open for timely cuts and catch-and-shoot opportunities. The system, once theoretical, began to crystallize into something real, tangible, and imminently actionable. As employees moved through the facility, a current of excitement rippled beneath their professionalism. Some remembered the era when Davis and LeBron brought the city its long-awaited championship, recalling the energy that pulsed through Los Angeles during those months. Others, newer to the organization, felt the gravity of what it meant to build around a generational talent like Luka. This blend of nostalgia and ambition created a unique atmosphere, one that connected the franchise's past triumphs to its future aspirations. Across the league, reactions varied. Some executives marveled at the boldness of the move, praising the Lakers for capitalizing on rare circumstances. Others questioned the risk, pointing out Davis's injury history and the cost in draft capital. Still, even the skeptics acknowledged that Los Angeles had positioned itself for a clear identity, a team built around an elite creator and a dominant defensive anchor, a combination that historically formed the backbone of championship-level basketball. The move wasn't just dramatic, it was strategically coherent. In Dallas, a different tone prevailed. Though the departure of stars always stung, the organization viewed the moment as a necessary turning point. They gained flexibility, assets, and the chance to shape a roster without the pressure of immediate contention. For a team navigating internal changes and leadership transitions, this trade became a foundation rather than a fracture. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by salvaging what once was, but by building toward what could be. For Davis, the emotional complexity of the moment reached its peak. The idea of returning to Los Angeles carried weight. Memories of triumph and turbulence intertwined. Yet the landscape had shifted. This wasn't the same team he left, not the same structure or dynamic. This version of the Lakers offered defined purpose, organizational alignment, and a partnership with a player whose timing, vision, and control complemented his strengths perfectly. The prospect of redemption, both personal and professional, resonated deeply. Luka, upon hearing the final updates, remained composed but unmistakably energized. He recognized the magnitude of adding a player capable of anchoring a defense at elite levels and providing vertical pressure unlike anyone currently on the roster. The possibilities expanded instantly: late-game actions, defensive counters, pace control, matchup manipulation. For a star defined by his strategic mind, the addition represented an exponential increase in creative options. Finally, after hours of exchanges, confirmations, and approvals, the agreement reached completion. Every signature, every clause, every number fell into place. The deal that once existed only as a bold idea was now reality. And just like that, a new path opened. A path built not on nostalgia but on belief in what these pieces together could create. Across Los Angeles, a renewed sense of identity began to take shape. The franchise understood the magnitude of what it had just committed to. It was more than a transaction. It was a declaration of intent, a promise to compete, evolve, and strive for greatness once again. The city had witnessed dramatic reinventions before, but this one carried a unique blend of ambition and reclamation. The new era wasn't just beginning, it was demanding attention, reshaping expectations, and signaling to the league that the Lakers were no longer navigating uncertainty. They were steering firmly toward a future built on purpose, partnership, and the pursuit of another defining moment.